with us. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Daniel. Hello, my name is Viktor Litvinov. I'm a web developer and team lead at Net2Phone. I'm originally from Ukraine, but came here from Spain. And the reason I have to say this, that the war in Ukraine is still going, and please do everything that you want to stop this. Today's topic is Kamailio DMQ. Every one of you using it right now in production, or not a lot of people, but good. I hope someone will start to use it after this presentation. So what is Kamailio DMQ? I want to say that it's Kamailio distributed message queue. It's just a SIP message. It's just SIP message with a specific method, KDMQ. And DMQ model, Kamailio DMQ model, it has three main entities, like node, peer. I'm usually calling peer like a role because mainly it's a role, and the message. This is like how it looks between, we have two nodes. We have some peers or roles in this node. Notification peer is something that is every time is here, because notification peer is something that provides the DMQ model. This is the role to start communicate between the nodes and discover the nodes. And we have like just a SIP KDMQ message between the nodes. I took this message from documentation for the KDMQ model. I highlighted here users in request URI and to from URI. It's always the same, and it always shows us the peer name, so it's a role. On the body for the notification peer, we see just the SIP URIs of different KDMQ nodes. Support of the DMQ, there is a few models that supporting KDMQ. It's htable, user location, dialog, presence, RTP engine that I added recently and pushed request this night, and Topaz. But Topaz not directly. Topaz using the Topaz htable model that was done by my colleague Stefano. You can use htable as a backend for the Topaz, and using the htable DMQ replication, you can replicate it through the cluster. So what is the active cluster? Like in my meaning, it's the few Kamailio nodes, at least two, because it should be cluster. They should manage the registration, subscription, and calls. Why? Because like I'm mainly working in like PBX area, where the main client is desk phones or mobile devices, or etc. This is not, yeah, for sure it's carriers and trunking, but it's a bit different. This is mainly for the clients like desk phones, normal clients. And it should support dynamic mode management. Like we should be able to stop, replace at any node at any time, and it should work without like call dropping, etc. This is like just a screenshot from this. I started it locally, a few containers on the left side. This is the client. There are two clients, one calling the other one. And when one of the client put on hold, the invite came to other Kamailio. So we have two Kamailio nodes and one client, or two clients. And like active, it means that it should be handled. Any node of the cluster can handle the new transaction or the same dialog. But as we are living we are still living in IPv4 world, we cannot send like normally. We cannot send the transaction from any others from any node that we want, because there is always not that we can. The client should came to us, create the connection with us, and we should send the same the messages and new transaction at the same connection. You should use the same connection. So to have active cluster on your side, you need to have something like a load balancer before it. It can be Kamailio, for example. It can be stateless Kamailio, but not stateless at all. At least it should have transaction model, and you should create the transactions to handle the transmissions, etc. So what data we want to replicate? We want to replicate registration information, so it's user location, it's already there. We want to replicate subscriptions, and there are two topics. It's the present entity itself and subscriptions. This was added by me. I also pushed the request this night. There was a present entity replication, but it was missing the subscriptions. So I added the subscription replication for the presence model. And for the calls, we need, if you're doing something with dialogues, you need to replicate the dialogues, and also RTP engine. The RTP engine was added recently by me, but you can ask why we need to replicate this RTP engine information. There is one table with the node association with the call and node association. Why do we need to replicate this? As RTP engine use hash function to identify the RTP engine node. So in highly dynamic cluster, it can be useful, because if you're recreating the RTP engine nodes really often, it can be a situation when the hash function will return you another node. So that's why I added this replication. We can build the same cluster, active cluster. We don't need DMQ. We can use database. Yes, it was always like this. But we need to use database only mode. We always need to write data directly to database and every time read. When we need the data, we need to read it from the database. So there is no cache invalidation mechanism in Kamailio right now with working database. So original idea was why we skipped from, we're going out from the database, because we want to exclude any external connection on our Kamailios. So databases are slow. It's even a database, if it's a huge instance or a cluster of database, it work really well, but there is a network. So for example, the Topaz, for the one message, it can do 5, 6, 7 database requests just for one message. And also, if you use DB only mode, every database query, your Kamailio worker will wait for the answer from the database. So it's blocking operations. Few tips that suggestions that I want to give you is the first one is to use FQDN everywhere where you can, even for the external, even for the internal communication. The second one is TCP. This is TCP as a transport for Kamailio DMQ. So you can use UDP, but Kamailio DMQ model depends on transaction model. It uses transaction model to create new messages, to generate messages to other nodes. But when you handle DMQ messages, you need to create transaction by your own. But do you really need to create transaction for it? You can just switch to TCP and don't worry about the retransmissions anymore. But it's not so easy. We switched it to TCP, everything was good. Then we ran a load test, pretty high load, and then just stop it or restarted one of the nodes. And we saw that the connection is not, it stay in the closing state. And what's the issue? The issue is the TCP reuse port option of the core model. And we turn it off. So after that, our two Kamailio nodes has two TCP connections between each other. But then we found another issue, that when the Kamailio node want to send the KDMQ message, it starts to send it from the socket that it listened, and but it was not able, and we need to wait some time out that the transaction model is switched to another TCP connection. So that's why The solution is to have two listeners, one just for receiving traffic from the cluster, and another to send traffic to the cluster. Next one is decrease timers. This is like the tricky one because when you're replicating some data, there can be a data that leaves the short period of time. Do we really need like 30 seconds trying to replicate this message? I don't think so. That I'm telling that you need to decrease these timers, T1, T2, and other timers. But for now, like in UAC of transaction model, there is no possibility to set custom timers for your messages. And when you decrease in the timers, you should decrease them globally on all Kamailio. But this will also affect all other messages. And this is something that's not solved right now. The next one is about the cluster size, and I want to say that you're replicating data. And there are a lot of data. And we don't want to build a big cluster, because if you're replicating all the data, you will just spend like your network, your memory for the data. So like in our tests, the normal cluster size is not more than 6 nodes in the cluster. But if you are replicating the presence information, it's even worse, because there are a lot of presence data. You're replicating the subscriptions and the present entities, and there will be a lot of data. So like in our test, it's optimal size of the cluster, of the presence cluster is 2 or 3 nodes. Also, the notification peer, it's the name of the peer, and we saw it here on the message, here. Notification peer. There is a parameter on the DMQ model, you can change this name. And I highly recommend you to do this, to include something to this name. Like change it to be unique for your cluster. And I will show you a bit later. So we have a cluster, like, but what to do if you want to build some bigger cluster, like 6 or even 10 nodes? And you can usually deploy few nodes in different regions. And do you really need to replicate all the data? Right now, Kamailio DMQ model works, it just replicates all the data that it can to all the nodes. And doesn't care like what this node can do or what this node can handle. I think this is something that we really want. Like, we need the information about registration on all nodes of the cluster. But do you really need the presence or maybe some htables, maybe some RTP engine information on all the clusters? Like if you put few nodes in one region behind one balancer, you need to replicate almost all the data you need only in this region. So I propose to create something to make the diversified cluster. And the solution that I start to implement is pretty easy. For the notification peer, we can replicate. We can also add, because it's CPURI, we just can add one more parameter with a peer list. Peers, it's our roles of the cluster. And what I propose, you can change peer names in all your nodes and include some suffix or prefix, anything you want. Like here, two first nodes had 1, like region. The second, 2. Okay, so in this case, node from first region will never send the presence information to second region, because we just filtered by peer name. There are an issue with DMQ. There are like, we need to solve it. and few of them is like data synchronization. If you remember right, there is only one model, and then it's user location that has the bunch sync functionality. If you want to replicate a lot of data, you will kill your cluster. Like if you have a lot of data and one new node just started and want to get this data, it will be really hard. So there is no proper like mechanism for synchronization, and also we cannot know at like given moment of the time what is the status of our nodes, what is the data that our node store. There is no mechanism for now to know this. So I think this is something that I really want to improve and create. Maybe some DMQ, some models want to support DMQ too. If you need any data that you want to replicate, we can add it. I didn't mention that when you use dialog model, for example, you cannot like use it properly because in active setup, because the data that we replicated using the dialog model is not full data, and you need always to handle all in-dialog transactions on the same node. So be careful with dialog model and all models that has the independency the dialog model. UAC custom timers, it's something that I already mentioned. It's from my vision, it's something that should be like added to the transaction model. That's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think that with the timers, maybe with local, with the event route local request might work, but could be simpler to do it in the UAC. Okay, so a question, Tyler?
Thanks for the talk. I was just wondering about the startup and discovery of nodes. What do you recommend for like a more static config? We've usually resorted to like multiple A records or like a serve record. Is that kind of what you're doing in your deployments?
In our deployment, we use FQDN, multi-value A records, or any PTRS or VDNS records. So it's perfect solution from LA. You spin up new node, you just add the update record, and that's all.
Okay. Quick one.
Yeah, it's almost the same question. When you are launching it, at the beginning you need to declare a server how to detect yourself as your unique node.
So this notification period is something that like when you start a new node, you have this notification address. This address, it will use to send like initial DMQ message. And like when the new node started, it sent this initial notification per message and tell the exist cluster that, hey, I'm a new node. So like, and then like an answer for this message, you will receive the list of all nodes in this cluster. So okay. You can have like one, you don't need to wait until DNS expire or.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Viktor. It's gonna be the coffee break. So for more questions, approach him. Before going into the coffee break, I wanted to give some